Hello and welcome to Sim.bc, where it's right now 10 past 1 in the morning. No, it's actually quarter past. And I'm joining you with a fresh cup of green because think about that environment. Am I right, people? Am I right? And if that wasn't a mystery enough for you, then well, you're in luck. Because today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about the genre that's probably the most fulfilling one of all of them. At least in my case, spoilers alert for the end. And that is going to be a detective story slash the mystery genre. Yes, indeed! And let me just begin with saying, we can get into the first question and I can, address it there. The first question that we're going to go through of the 5 that makes up sort of the structure of this video, I'm going to ask and then answer them how I would like to write or how I would go about writing a story within this genre. Let's start with the first one, which is very character-based. How would I go about designing the scope of the characters and what would the main character gravitate towards of the main characters? Now, the thing I would like to address is that everybody of us in here, out there behind the screens on your side and on mine, have probably most likely to 110% heard about Sherlock bloody Holmes. Yes, everybody probably nods in confinement with himself, being like, oh yes, Sherlock Holmes, oh yes, it's elementary, isn't it? Which is sort of my favorite stories of all time. I've read some of the books, I've seen all of the different series I can get my hands on. I absolutely love a good bloody mystery story. Not necessarily bloody though, because that's not always a good mystery story, because that can give away a whole lot of things. You can also misdirect. Interesting, isn't it? But a good murder mystery is out there already, and I cannot comprehend how I would go about trying to make the same masterpiece all over again. I most likely wouldn't be able to. And that is why, when I'm looking at how I would go about creating the scope of the characters, let's say if there would be in a group, a semi-group, if there would be alone, individualistic, I would refrain from making a duo. To all extent, because of Sherlock bloody Holmes. I'm looking up to that series so much. I really like that book series. I really like the universe in which they are posed, how Sherlock Holmes is going about dealing with problems, and that might be why I want to dip my own toes into that water that is mysteries, because that is a detective's approach, a detective's nature, a detective's purpose to unravel the different mysteries out there now, isn't it? So I would probably try to gravitate, out of and away from a duo, just because Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson is such an iconic one, and I wouldn't be able to recreate that. So I would probably do a very individualistic, its own person, just a one-person team, or a huge cast of characters who are all working together. Maybe a police force or something like that, that tries to unravel mysteries. Now, obviously, there are going to be different ways I would go about creating problems, drama, comedy, romance, for the different groups, which is, either the group or the one individual. I would probably tend to gravitate towards more of the individual, which I've seen is sort of a thing in the previous genres I've been talking about as well, especially in the action one. But I just like that approach of being the one person surrounded by lots of other people, but still feeling truly alone, because there's something beautiful with the anxiety and, what should we say, the irritation and the insecurity that should be there when you're alone. That should be there, that probably would be there, and why you are afraid of being part of a group, but it shouldn't be the reason for why this character is alone. The reason for why this character is alone is because they're confident in what they do and people just can't stand them. I realize now that if I say intelligent as well, I'm just describing Sherlock Holmes. But that would like to, that's sort of the character I would like to build. Someone who is intelligent, confident, maybe even a bit cocky, but alone. And that would be the main difference probably if you take a look at something like Sherlock Holmes and a lot of other mysteries, murder mystery detective stories, where they're generally one supporting character, because it's easy to play off a supporting character in order to create intrigue and personal growth for the main character. But I would like to make it harder. I would like to go that step further and make the one character just the one character. Have a main character who solves all of the mysteries and just relies on themselves when realizing the different mysteries. yet again, that's what I tend to gravitate towards. It might very well be that I crack down under pressure of writing it, and I'm like, you know what, this doesn't work. Let's have a huge group instead, and that way everybody can grow together, and I don't need to make some very, very creative decisions in the writing and write myself into a corner just because I have one main character who only interacts really with him or herself, and very few other people who are, you know, who aren't always with them and won't know them on that much of a personal level. Or we combine the things and we have a huge cast of characters that the one character always is interacting with, going back and forth, sort of like informers of a sort, but the one character is always on his or her own. I think that would be very interesting, especially in a detective mystery sort of thing, because it would be a mystery around the main character. All of the supporting characters might view the one main character as a mystery of it within itself, but the main character would be a sort of detective. Now, we're not necessarily talking murder detective though, we can be talking about all manner sorts of different detectives. I would probably try to incorporate something along the lines of instruments and music into sort of how I would go about in creating puzzles for the detectives, let's say, to solve, because I have some form of expertise when it comes to music and instruments, and I know lots of people who are very into that sort of, you know, what would probably be classified as music nerds. And you have to sort of realize and utilize the existing resources all around you, going all the way back to a project, right, about a founder's problem. But you need to be able to realize and utilize the resources around you and your personal experience. That's probably why I would go that sort of direction instead of a murder mystery, which would also be the reason, right, for why that would be maybe a bit different from Sherlock Holmes. Therefore, I probably need to come up with a different idea for why this mystery that I tried to present to the main character would be needed to be solved. And if I just take something like the world is gonna end if you don't solve this, then we're straight into the Da Vinci Code, right? So I need to be very creative in how I, you know, adapt to that situation, but I think it's a very interesting way of going about it. Let's move into the second question though, so that we actually get going here, and that is, what would be the geographical confinement of the story? Now, this is something that I have been given sort of not that much of thought, because it was just such a, you know, such an obvious answer to it when I thought of it. And that is a city. It might not necessarily have to be a small city or a huge city. Could be an undefined sized city, which to some degree would help me be a bit more free on the details of the book, which might not necessarily be a blessing, since it's going to be a mystery detective story that sort of maybe relies a bit on facts, probably does, which means that I probably need to define the city anyway. But a city is such a good place because it creates different geographical positions within the same climate that could be vastly different. You could have a place that is very reliant on the poor, one that is very reliant or surrounded around, or thematically surrounded around the rich in society, and you can have everything in between. You can have the snobs, you can have your hipsters, you can have your homeless people, you can have the slums, you can have everything, and these will create very different experience for the main character, very different experiences when it comes to how going about with different leads in different areas, and these will also make natural inhabitants for the other supporting cast of the world surrounding the main character, which is going to be the sort of pseudo what you would say is main supporting character that is going to be split around all of these other supporting characters in the world. But yet again, making a natural inhabitant, making sure that you have a natural split between all the characters, and you can also try and challenge and confirm some stereotypes with these characters in order to make sure that you shouldn't judge them by how they look, but how they actually behave. That would probably be a good idea, would provide some character growth for the main character, even though if they're really intelligent, they're probably going to be the one person who doesn't really care about that. Or we can see how the main character is growing in both intelligence and adaptation to new situations when being faced with these supporting characters. Maybe the main character doesn't know these supporting characters from before, which means that having to travel to all of these different places, meeting new characters all of the time, would probably be a good way of growing the character as well. But yet again, the geographical confinement and area of a city puts a limitation to the what you would say, the mystery at hand, but also it is a big enough area for lots of diversification to be made. I think it's a good idea to place it like this, and that's probably what I'm gonna roll with if I go and write a story within this genre. But you know, it's early days. Haven't really gotten to making a full story yet. Now, the third number 3 question I'm asking myself with this thematic is, What sort of problems / obstacles could I create for the character or characters in the genre? Now, in a mystery detective story, I can present whatever I want and you say it's a mystery. No, that's not how I'm going to go about it. But we can present sort of things like magic and then trying to unravel why magic isn't magic and it's actually just a trick. We can be trying to present different lessons, really. We can try to identify the stereotypes between the poor and the rich, yeah, and say this is how the poor work and this is how the rich work, and then try to combine that sort of as a problem the main character is facing. Like, why do people think that poor people work in this way and behave in this way? Why do they think that rich people are behaving in this way? Boiling it down to some form of connection between the rich and the poor, either the rich utilizing and using the poor, or the other way around. Maybe, I don't know, we can just work with that, and that could be sort of a pseudo part of the entire overarching story in making sure that they unravel the mystery. A part of the mystery could be this connection between the rich and the poor. It could also be between magic. It can also be, and this is the best thing with having a mystery to work with, because that generally makes a natural red thread to work with throughout the entire story, right? You can always say that the main character, the main detective, is always on the run for the next clue of the mystery, and in order to either obtain or realizing these clues, being thrown into a different situation. That is why the character is faced with this problem. So in this genre, it's not necessarily which problems I can throw towards the detective, but how do I utilize different clues in the overarching mystery to create sort of subsequent mini mysteries for the detective to solve, in order to show off exactly how good the main character is at their job, or how bad they are at solving mysteries, in order to provide some context for the viewer when the detective is solving in the story as just a sub-mystery, something that other people would deem to be something really interesting, really hard, and really delicate, and really complex. Or failing horribly, it's something that is really simple, making the reader be thinking like, maybe this overarching mystery isn't that complex at all. Just to shove the entire thing around and just turn it on its own head and be like, well, you can only really realize the clues and put them together in the way you do if you don't think in a complex, very intellectual way. So you can have it go either way, both ways, and you can also say that the main character is obtaining all the clues very early, but doesn't really understand what they are until they gain the intelligence and the confidence in order to really establish and knowing and utilize them in the way. And you can also really make the clues, the mystery within itself, being obtained really early, and then making the obstacles different skills that are needed to be acquired in order to utilize and understand and connect these different clues. In essentially, right, making the main character as a clean slate in the beginning of the story, and a fulfilled slate, that's not what you say, but a fulfilled character filled with different traits in the end of the story, and you've seen how this has been filled out and how that interacts with specific clues. And so on and so forth, and how those clues, when they're about to be realized, sends the character off on a different journey, on a different quest, on a different towards a different obstacle on the way throughout the story. I think it's a really good way of going about it, even though I haven't really thought about it that much. This is just a raw format after all, so don't criticize me too much, even though feedback is appreciated. Now, moving into question number 4. Who would be the intended target audience if you were to write a story within this genre? Now, I would probably try to target young adults to adults, because I would like to write it very factual based, and I would like to have someone who has at least, the context of an entire education process from at least to high school is what I'm trying to say. I just assume, right, that if you are at the high school level, you've done all of the previous levels before, and I don't really know what the lowest one is called in English. But yeah, someone who has at least a high school education, and then you can use some things as physics, chemistry, and biology in order to sort of show off the natural sort of side of magic, and you can use that very basic things that everybody learned but nobody obviously remember, or I'm saying nobody, but most people don't really remember, but they still have been in contact with it, so they sort of know what it is, right? Sort of like you can use something like cold dating, cold 14 dating, something that most people know about, or at least have heard about, but maybe not fully realize what it is. Obviously, me myself, I need to read up on the subject, but I think that it would be a more fulfilling book for me to write if I could use facts that I think that the readers will be able to understand, or the viewers or whatever, I would be able to understand when seeing it, or would be able to at least grasp the concept of it based on that they have actually been reading, studying this years and years earlier, or quite recently, but that they do know and have some form of basis to work from. And that would also make the mysteries a bit easier to make complex while still maintaining and retaining the viewers or the readers, because that means that we can put it at a bit of a higher level and utilizing different things as history, religion, society, societal problems, politics, economics, and so on and so forth. I think it would be a better way of going about it, targeting it to an audience that's a bit more mature, a bit more grown up. Because if we talk about kids, then, well, some things are probably going to be a lot too complex and involve things that they don't have a chance to know about, which will leave them in the dust, which isn't the intention, right? So try to focus this deductive mystery story probably towards younger adults to adults, maybe even senior citizens, but it might be that their view on society is sort of quote unquote, right, obsolete in comparison to the lessons that I try to convey within the story. Might be, might not be. Anyway, well, if we work with senior citizens, it could be like something like sexism is wrong, racism is wrong, and yeah. Anyway, that's more of a another video that has been made. Go back to the intro video of this; it's hilarious. Anyway, I'm sorry, respecting your elders. We derailed there for a while. Question number 5 though. How much enjoyment would I get out of creating something within this thematic genre? A lot. Even though I truly believe that writing a detective story and sort of a mystery book would take equally as long, if you make it right, as making a tragedy drama as we talked about yesterday. I think that the reason that it's fact-based would be the thing that makes it sort of easier, because I have facts that I can retain the key points towards and surround the entire story with, so I know concrete stuff that I can establish my story around. However, I will be needing to study a lot on these specific facts in order to implement them in a good way, and that will probably be the time sink of making this this type of story. I think that would be really fulfilling, because it would make me look into different facts, just like the SNR at this channel. How I'm making a video based on news that I'm being forced, quote unquote forced, or rather inspired and moved towards looking into. And I think that would create sort of additional skills for me, and I think that would be really fulfilling. And also realizing and finding new skills and then being able to implement them in a creative way in a story, it's going to be really fulfilling for me. Even though it's probably going to take a really long time to write due to, as I say, the time sink of actually making all of the research that's probably necessary for making the flow consistent with facts that the entire story probably needs to surround, to revolve around. Anyway, mates, that's just my ideas and my types of the topic at hand as of today. Let's just take a quick peek on what is coming up tomorrow, though, because I've been doing this over the last few days, because, well, I have a schedule of all the videos I'm going to do until like 36566, something like that. And tomorrow is going to be, well, yeah, we're taking a break from the project after like 2 days to have a little celebratory video, because tomorrow is video 350. Yes, it's gonna be great. Maybe, or it's gonna be interesting. I highly encourage you to go watch it though. Have a nice one, mates. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.